Hej, här Murdock med en anmeldelse om The All Is One fra Motorpsycho. This channel has now officially been banned on YouTube in Norway, but for all you other viewers, welcome to another Indie Corner and the final part, the final installment of the Gullvåg trilogy by Motorpsycho. 3 albums, all designed by the same artist, the same painter, Håkon Gullvåg, with his, very unique painting style. And all these albums were released in succession, and the final one is called The All Is One, and it looks like this. Came out in 2020, and for everyone who lived through that year or period, you all know what happened in 2020. Yes, this album saw Motorpsycho in the full grip of the first wave of the COVID pandemic. Like so many, or practically every other artists and bands, they found themselves in the uncomfortable situation that they were not able to tour. Also, recording became a little bit difficult, but most, or I think practically all of the sessions for this album had already been recorded in 2019. The album was partly recorded in France, and parts of it were recorded in the band's native Norway. We have the distinct Gullvåg or Gullvåg artwork here, but this time not so much focusing on the colors black and sort of a dark green, like the first 2 albums, The Tower and The Crucible, all of which I reviewed on this channel. This one is more blue. Focus here is on blue and yellow, or gold. I didn't find a name for the cover painting this time around, but I quite like this artwork. It's, to me, this is very open to interpretation, I think. To me, it looks like a figure, a person, with a kind of vase, or kind of bucket, anything. Yeah, this could be a cup, or maybe a spoon. This could also be sort of liquid gold. I think this is a much more positive, but still very mysterious cover design. On the other hand, this figure here has a kind of a face like a skull, so this could also be, sort of time running out, maybe. But overall, I find this a more peaceful and more positive cover artwork. For the cover design, or the sleeve design, Motorpsycho continue their fold-out concepts that they also used for both the Tower and the Crucible, but this time the package is a little bit more elaborate, because the cover sleeve unfolds like this. I hope you can somehow see this. So we have a fold out like this, cross-shaped. Here's my face. In the middle, another painting of Gullvåg, again using this kind of vase and spoons, liquid. And here on the respective corners you get track information, the lyrics, thank yous and credits. The band lineup again is the same as on the 2 albums before, with a few guest musicians here and there. And this time Motorpsycho produced the album themselves and had Andrew Sheps as the mixing engineer, so he was responsible for getting the sound right this time around. So the albums again are loosely inside this sleeve, and yes, I'm talking about albums because the All Is One again is a double album, and I'm almost ruining my vinyl here for these review videos. So we have 2 LPs, 2 records, again with very nice details from the cover painting in the middle, or as instead of a label. The album also came with a download code. Thank you very much, Stickman Records. Again, a bit more of a, I don't know, friendlier imagery, not as dark as the Tower and the Crucible. And the vinyl double album also came with a poster of the band in a very eccentric pose. I quite like it. There's something humorous to it, maybe. And at the back you also have a painting or paintings, because you can choose either way you fold up this album sleeve. You have a different image at the back, and I would say this very much works with wings, feathers. I'm thinking of birds and angels, to be honest. But as I've mentioned, the imagery used for this album leaves a lot of space for individual interpretation. What has also become quite fun is to look for the carvings or engravings on the runout groove on each of the records. And to be honest, before this video, I never checked with the All Is One. There were mottos engraved on the records, both on the Tower and the Crucible. I never had a look at the All Is One, but I had to find out, to my great pleasure, that they did it again with the All Is One. And here, if you look carefully on sides 2, 3, and 4, in the runout groove, there are words engraved, not visible on camera here, but on side 2 it says neutrons, on side 3 electrons, and on side 4 morons. So Motorpsycho let us know the chemistry of the world, consisting of neutrons, electrons, and morons. Musically, the band sticks to their vocabulary, their musical vocabulary that they have established with the albums before. However, I would argue that the metal and the prog elements are quite toned down for most of this album. It's more straightforward rock with, one foot firmly placed in the 1970s. Arguably, or to my ears, this is a 70s inspired rock record, but with a modern sound, with one exception in the middle, but I'll come to that a little later. Overall, the structure of this album is a bit schizophrenic or interesting. One could argue that actually the One Is All consists of two separate albums that are somehow molded together, because we have a framework of individual, more accessible rock songs on side 1 and side 4 of the double album, and side 2 and 3, however, are taken up by a huge epic track. The themes and the lyrics are not exactly new. They actually repeat or continue the themes that were prominent on both the Tower and the Crucible. Again, we see Motorpsycho protesting or raging against our modern age and society, especially totalitarian tendencies in politics and society, the dangers of totalitarian and radical views, and the death of discourse in the world of social media, and how that all adds to the rather depressive state our society is in, at least according to the band. This is put to rather poignant lyrics already in the opening track. It's the title track, The All Is One. Starting with the lines, "Nobody talks anymore. The public discourse is gone. It's ugly like never before. Binary thinking has won." This is all presented in a mid-tempo, as mentioned, classic rock, 70s rock sounding track. Again, with lots of mellotron sounds that we already had on the other albums, but with less of those avant-garde or space rock elements, and also less, or actually none, of the stoner metal influences that were strongly featured in parts of the Tower, and especially, I think, on the Crucible. So this album isn't quite as heavy sounding as the other two, but still it's clearly a rock album. But most of the music on here definitely is a lot easier to get into and less experimental than the often really challenging, huge epic experiments on the Crucible. At least the first 4 tracks and the final 4 tracks. So the album opens with the title track, which is very pleasing on the ear. Maybe a little bit plodding, as I said, rather mid-tempo. Most of the tracks here are mid-tempo. But things get a little bit more exciting with the second track, which is called The Same Old Rock. Also a mid-tempo, of course, guitar-based rock song, but with some more dramatic elements and more dramatic drumming in the breaks. This song also seems to be a bit more personal in terms of content. So this time around, it's not about politics or social media, modern society during the COVID years. It seems to be about a breakup or the end of a relationship, losing hope in the relationship, and ultimately also loneliness.
This big old house is haunted. I'm alone here without you. I miss everything you used to do.
The third song on here is called The Magpie, and with that title, Motorpsycho continue their loose series of songs about birds, or with birds in the title. They had a song called Mockingbird on one of their albums, one of my favorite Motorpsycho songs, by the way. And then The Cuckoo on the tower, and now it's The Magpie. This is one of the most up-tempo, most energetic tracks on the first side. Also one of my favorites on this first side, I would say. Starts with a descending melody and then turns into another of Motorpsycho's retro rock songs with a bit of a prog leaning. Great guitar work from Hans Magnus Rian on this track, a great solo, wonderful double-tracked guitar melody line throughout the song. Again, reminds me a little bit of Wishbone Ash at times. Yeah, this is a very good, solid Motorpsycho rock track. We end the first side with a song called Delusion. It's a very short acoustic track, but very mysterious. It's volume-wise, it's very low and, you know, echoey, very hazy sounding. It's like an echo carried by the wind to your ears. Not the most essential track, but it provides a very nice calm down and a little, you know, break of silence and calmness before we hopefully flip over the records and start with side 2, where we enter the NOX suite. But before I get into that, I think it's time for a little haircut. Okay, sides 2 and 3 of the All Is One are inhabited by the NOX suite, or I think it's actually just called NOX. This was originally, or initially, a commissioned work for the St. Olaf Festival in Trondheim. I'm not exactly sure. I think this is kind of a jazz festival. And Motorpsycho wrote this piece together with 2 jazz musicians and also performed it there. But they sort of refined and re-recorded it for this album version. According to the band, NOX is inspired, or a response, an artistic response to the artwork of Håkon Gullvåg in general. So it's inspired by his paintings and a kind of celebration of Gullvåg's work. The NOX suite is split up into 5 parts or subsections called Circles Around the Sun, Ouroboros, Strange Loop, Ascension, Night of Pan, and then Circles Around the Sun Part 2. And yeah, overall, NOX is a good 42 minutes of music. So we are really talking about prog epicness here, as opposed to the more conventional rock songs before and after. This is really a neo-progressive, meditative space rock mega piece. It's mostly instrumental. There are lyrics in the first section and at the end of the piece, but in between it's all just music that takes you on, well, a trip. And as very often with Motorpsycho's longer, more experimental pieces, NOx very much uses their, I think, perfected technique or approach of developing rather repetitive structures, almost like loops actually. And one of the parts also is called strange loop, but of course not really loop, but played organically with real instruments in the studio. But they use very repetitive motifs, little melodic lines that are repeated over and over, but that are built on. So layers are added, the tension increases, and in the end, it all builds up to one huge crescendo. It's very, well, in the truest sense, entrancing music. And I think, as I've already said elsewhere, this is something that you either like or you won't about Motorpsycho's brand of prog rock or psychedelic rock. Some people probably will say that it is too monotonous, too repetitive. It's treading water until something else happens, while other listeners like me really can sort of fall into these kind of long tracks and follow the carefully added layers and the dynamics that are built up by these pieces. What little lyrics we get in this huge suite are rather abstract. I would say it's another comment on the dynamics and the rules, the often absurd rules our society works with. Maybe it's also more a more general comment on or description of the human condition, but they are very oblique, those lyrics here, and very open to interpretation. A nice touch here is that actually the lyrics mention all of the albums that are part of this so-called Gullvåg trilogy. In Circles Around the Sun Part 2, it says, what does it signify, this play that goes on forever? Maybe also a little bit, the idea of the passion play that is human life, similar to Jethro Tull, maybe. Society's golden bond that grows dim and fades like planets around the sun. Cardinals, dukes, and princes in a processional march, an endless parade. A crucible, a square, and a tower. A hierarchy that's losing its power. Balance, balance. Yeah. These kind of lyrics are maybe a bit of a question of taste, can come across as a little bit pretentious, or, as I said, very abstract. But what's the main winner here, obviously, is the music. As can be expected with a lot of long, epic tracks, NOx starts slowly, very low. It, takes its time to draw you in, to slowly build up a kind of structure, but then becomes more and more dramatic until, after 5 or 6 minutes maybe, Ola Kvernberg joins the music. He is a violinist and composer, and on this track, in this first part of the NOx suite, he plays some avant-garde-ish violin, which adds a kind of almost fusion jazz touch to the sound of Motorpsycho. Think of maybe a less speedy version of Jean-Luc Ponty. Very cool sound, if you like jazz fusion or more, experimental kinds of rock music. Also, on NOx, we get to hear Lars Horntvedt as a guest musician. He plays saxophone and clarinet, and is probably best known as a member or maybe even founder of Jaga Jazzist, also a group or collective from Norway. And Motorpsycho had worked with Jaga Jazzist in the past. So these are, befriended musicians who add their own flavor to this album. The second part, Ouroboros, then becomes even more energetic. It's very percussive, driven by a steady beat and a repetitive chord progression. That's why it's also called, in brackets, strange loop. It really builds on the same motif over and over again, but with guitars added. It's, for me, it's very exciting music, where others maybe will say that it's a bit grating and drawn out, repetitive stuff. Ouroboros, by the way, and that's something I learned from this album review now, is a symbol from ancient alchemy. Probably most of you know it. It's the snake that swallows its own tail. And that, of course, stands for a repetitive circle of, matter transforming and then transforming back into its original state. But of course, in a wider sense, this also stands for immortality or infinity. And when you listen to this music, you really get the feeling that you are sort of flying into infinity, or that you are in a ever spiraling groove. And that is what Motorpsycho do masterfully, not only on this track, also on other albums, but here they one more time demonstrate that they develop this style into perfection, actually. The tension that they build up and then release by very bright major chords that suddenly break in. Very melodic guitar lines, actually, and, well, a sense of vastness in the whole music. It's very epic and majestic at times, and then again, there are passages that sound rather chaotic, very intense and dramatic and urgent. And in the following parts, the last two parts, on taking up the whole of side 3 of this album, they even make it more intense, again with a repetitive little motif that goes on for a while, but is built up more and more until it all finishes in a huge, dramatic and loud climax, and the piece returns again to the sort of main motif on which it also started, Circles Around the Sun, Part 2. This is a lot of music to take in. You need some patience. You need to be a fan of space rock, or the more repetitive aspects of progressive rock. But I think for fans of this kind of music, NOX is definitely a highlight. And if you never heard of Motorpsycho, or if you haven't heard this track, listen to it and check out this album as a whole, actually. And the small excerpts that I add here in my video only will give you a glimpse of the NOX suite. And yes, this really needs to be heard as one huge piece from start to finish in order for it to convey its masterfulness, in my opinion. And then on side 4, we are back into more conventional, more relaxed, retro rock territory. It might seem a little bit disjointed to have these rock songs, the huge epic piece in the middle, and then again some more shorter tracks. But, well, at the end of the day, the all is one. Somehow everything is connected, everything floats into each other, and everything maybe is part of a huge circle. So, while maybe not the most coherent album, somehow it all makes sense to me as a listener. NOx was recorded in Norway, unlike most of the other tracks, and there are also some shorter acoustic tracks that were also recorded in Norway. The last quarter is opened by the track A Little Light, and that is the most fitting title, one of the most fitting titles I've ever seen. It's a short, very melodic acoustic track, really lovely piece of music. The first time I listened to this album, I was not prepared to have something like that on here, especially not after the gigantic onslaught of music of NOx. Yes, a gorgeous track. I really, really like this. And yeah, I would like to see Motorpsycho maybe do an all-out acoustic album one day. This is followed by Dreams of Fancy, one of the more mid-tempo, a little bit plodding rock tracks based on a nice little riff, almost a little bit with a funky undertone. Not that it is a funk track. I don't think we will get that from Motorpsycho, but yeah, there's a little funky edge to this guitar riff. Lots of mellotrons, a song about believing in oneself, following one's own notions and dreams. This is a pretty nice grooving track to nod your head to. Then we get The Dowser, which is again a shorter, very quiet and intimate track. It's basically just a more or less clean electric guitar and a little bit of mellotron keyboards and vocals. This song also lyrically seems to be again a little bit more personal, more introspective, maybe again dealing with the end of a relationship or looking back at a love relationship that broke up. Stylistically, this seems to go back a little bit more into the style of Motorpsycho from the late 90s, early 2000s, when they were more concise in their songwriting, more melodic and a bit more psychedelic, almost with a few pop leanings. But as mentioned, that's maybe just a very subtle shift in sound here overall. It's, as mentioned, a rather short track. And that then leads us to the final piece, the closing track of The All Is One. That track is called Like Chrome. It's another slow mid-tempo rocker, and I really, really love that one. It's a last final highlight of the album. It's got a beautiful melodic guitar hook line, which is the foundation of the song. It has very tuneful melodic passages, soaring high. And then again, great interplay between the, I think, increasingly melodic guitar playing of Hans Magnus and the crunchy, almost aggressive bass of Bent Zetter. This track sounds like a kind of advice maybe to a child. Unleashed from your tether, you'll run free, baby. Go discover your own way ahead. Find your friends, the birds of your feather, the nopes and the maybes. Go discover you're crazy, but don't let yourself be misled. 'Cause it's all a pose, no one really knows where their river flows. I'd say Motorpsycho here really drew inspiration from maybe the proggier moments of Led Zeppelin. Like Chrome could be an outtake from, for example, Physical Graffiti or Houses of the Holy. For any fan of, sort of classic rock transported to the 21st century, Like Chrome is, or should be a real gem to listen to, I guess.
Find that sweet silver lining, find it and set yourself free. No one knows where that river flows. No one knows where to
The All Is One peaked at number 3 in Norway and reached 31 in Germany, which is quite an accomplishment for this kind of music and type of album in this day and age. Unfortunately, there were little to no opportunities for the band to promote this release. In 2020, of course, due to all the lockdowns and the overall situation and complications for bands to travel and, play concerts, public concerts. So maybe this final installment of the Gullvåg trilogy was, less prominent than maybe The Tower and The Crucible. But this is a beautiful, fantastic double album. It's hard for me to say actually which one of the 3 albums I like best. Maybe my heart goes a little bit into the direction of The Tower, but this one is maybe the most beautiful and the most positive sounding of all the 3 albums. Also as individual albums, they really all stand in their own right. This trilogy idea actually is more a loose concept due to some themes that run through all of the 3 albums, and of course the artwork. These are 3 albums that are tied together by a certain sound, the artwork as mentioned, and also some ideas, some themes and topics in the lyrics. For any Motorpsycho fan, The All Is One, in my mind, is a must. You should really get this album if you don't own it already. Also, even though this is a lot of music to take in again due to it being a double album, this might be a nice choice to get a first taste of Motorpsycho, because you get both their a bit more straightforward, slower, classic rock inspired music, and then their progressive excursions that really go, into all kinds of directions and take a bit of patience to listen to, but then are double as rewarding. There's a little bit more Motorpsycho in my collection, not just on vinyl, also in digital format or on CD, so maybe I will continue with a few other Motorpsycho albums in the future. For now, I thank you for your patience, and maybe if you haven't known Motorpsycho until now, I could whet your appetite for this band. I think they really deserve to be known more widely. Stay tuned for more Murdock Music Minutes. Whatever will come around next might be some obscure 60s garage rock. It might be a classic album from the 70s, or maybe a new indie release.
Who knows? Let's keep life exciting and surprising. See you around. Thank you.